everyone. Thank you so much for being here for the July 8th edition of the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness. Oh, and my mic was not on, so I'm going to again call this meeting to order for the July 8th Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness. Thanks to everyone who's joined us here in person today, committee members and staff, as well as our committee members who are online today and presenters. We have no late items to introduce today.
Madam Chair, we just have the one which was circulated yesterday on the addendum, which was the Mofeo Sutton Park washroom project designs, which would be considered under 8B. And then we also have a further addendum that will be posted today, some more color renderings.
Amazing. Yes, thank you so much. So, do we need to vote on the introduction of late items or just mention them? Okay.
Just adoption of the agenda as amended.
So if I could have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended, moved by Tammy, seconded by Alexandria, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you so much. We have one set of minutes from a date that it doesn't say.
May 13th.
Oh, May 13th. Okay, I think I have maybe an outdated paper. Sorry about that. So one set of minutes from our May 13th meeting. Any amendments or edits to that anyone would like to make? Okay, not seeing any. If I could have a motion for the adoption of those minutes, moved by Alexandria, seconded by Sean, all in favor? Thank you, that carries. So under council communications, you will recall that we talked about the OV Arts Center on Victoria Road, and we suggested a motion, and council adopted a motion that we direct staff to review the accessibility of the current designated accessible parking spaces adjacent the OV Arts Center and provide options for improvements for parking and mobility, such as crosswalks and curb cuts. So thank you so much to the committee for facilitating that. And we also adopted a motion around dependent care reimbursement for committee members, that council directs staff to draft a policy that governs the reimbursement of dependent and attendant care expenses incurred by committee members who are not members of council to attend committee meetings. So thank you so much, and I'm glad council supported those things as well. We have an exciting presentation today on
Oh, you're good. Okay. You can see the back of the paper.
Whoop, okay. We have a presentation today on Loudon Park improvements, and I will throw this to our General Manager of Community Services and Deputy CAO, Lisa Bell-Paulsing, to bring us in.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be before you today to get your feedback and oversight on a project that has been in the waiting, I understand, for over 25 years. So before I introduce our architect and consulting team, Faulkner Brown, this project is one that is really important in terms of providing community space, both outdoors and indoors, for a neighborhood in our secondary primary urban center, which is the Country Club Center, but it's also an amenity that would be the first of its kind in Nanaimo. And so it's a project that, like Westwood, will up our game on the accessibility criteria. Also, like our Mofeo Sutton accessible playground, it will also have those types of amenities that, again, provide for families, children, and people of all ages, stages of life, and abilities. And so we're excited to bring this to you, to get your feedback. And with that, I will turn over to Angela Enman, who is to my left with Faulkner Brown. She's an associate. And also on the screen, we have supporting her Sabrina Hoke. I think she's online. And between all of us, I also have to my right some members of the project team. So I have Marcus Van Zale and Mike Strain to my right. And also we have other staff, because this is a very integrated project and it takes a lot of people to get even to this design stage. So over to you, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much for the introduction. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Angela Enman. I'm an associate at Faulkner Browns. We are the architects on the Loudon Park Improvements Project, and we are so excited to be here today at this stage of design and to get all the wonderful feedback from this committee. And we are really keen to make this project as accessible and inclusive as possible. And online, we have Sabrina Hoek, who is also an associate at Faulkner Browns, and Justin Dykstra, who is the landscape architect on the project. The clicker is not working. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, great. In terms of the agenda for our presentation, we will start by giving an introduction, talking about the current project schedule, where we are at in terms of the design. We will give a bit of insight on the project background, the project goals, and the existing context. After that, we will move on to talking about the site, the existing site features and constraints, and then we will walk you through the site plan and landscape design. After that, we will move on to the community building within the park. And then after that, we will talk about next steps. So starting with the schedule. Okay, so in April and May, we completed the pre-design or concept design phase of the project, which is where we establish things like key site concepts, the building location in the park, relationships and sizes of the various spaces. And we are now in schematic design, which will be taking us through June and July. And during that time, we will be developing what the building looks like, what it feels like, the key structural, mechanical, and electrical systems, key features of the various spaces, materials. It's really perfect timing to seek feedback from because it's still very early days in the design. So we have lots of time to incorporate any feedback to kind of make this project as good as we can and make sure that it meets the community needs. Looking ahead, design development will take place in August and September. During that time, we will be finalizing the floor plans, developing details, products, systems, fixtures, stuff like that. And then the construction documents phase will be where we will be finalizing kind of the design and all the details associated with it, and that will take place towards the end of this year. I will now turn it over to Sabrina to talk us through the project objectives.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. I'm joining you from North Vancouver. I'm sitting here in a striped t-shirt and I have my hair in a bun. I want to share a bit of a background story for this project before we dive deep into the details. Loudon Park is a highly valued waterfront park on Long Lake and a super important community destination for recreation, for paddling, for swimming events, and public access to the lake. And the park is also home to the Nanaimo Canoe and Kayak Club, the Nanaimo Rowing Club, and the Flatwater Society. And it includes aging facilities that no longer meet the needs of the users today in the community. The project will redevelop the site with a new community amenity building, some new improved boat storage, enhanced public amenities such as public washrooms, upgraded park infrastructure and playgrounds, and expanded open space while preserving the park's natural character and improving the accessibility for all users. As Lisa mentioned earlier, the project has evolved through more than 20 years of community engagement and design development, council discussions, and park expansions with the city plan of 2022. So along with those, with the City Plan 2022 objectives, we have a framework that guides us through all stages of the design, and those are equitable access and mobility, community well-being and livability, and belonging and inclusion and accessibility. We move forward to the next slide, please. One more, please. I assume many of you already know the site, and I'm going to jump in here before Justin, our landscape architect, can talk about his beautiful plan here. But yeah, many of you are probably already familiar with the site, but for those who aren't, it's very important to understand that some of the unique characters of the site, particularly the topography and how it impacts accessibility. Visitors approach the site through a residential neighborhood, and as you get closer to the park and the parking area, the roadway gradually slopes down towards the lake. And it's actually a significant grade change, which creates some of the key accessibility challenges we are working to address in our project, and also both along the park pathways, so within the park, and the journey from the parking lot and the parking areas into the park itself. And as you arrive, you'll notice a small single-story building directly in front of the lake that currently obstructs views to the water. And this building today houses the existing public washrooms, as well as the facilities that are used by the paddling clubs. And this building will be demolished and replaced with a brand new, larger building. And to the right, as you arrive to the site, and to the right, there are two existing buildings, and those are planned for removal. And the removal will allow the park to expand and create a larger, more expanded space for the community amenities and the new building. And this new building includes community, like a multi-purpose community room, boat storage, as well as facilities for training facilities for the paddling clubs. Understanding these existing site conditions is important, and because they have played a very significant role in shaping both the accessibility strategy for the project and also the overall design approach for this design. And I would like to hand it over to Justin. Justin, you can jump in here and describe a bit more what we're doing in terms of the landscape and the site approaches for Loudon Park.
Hey everybody, my name is Justin Dykstra. I'm a senior landscape architect with Benny and Associates, and we're the lead for the landscape architecture and park development scope of the project. And I'm joining you from my brother's house in South Dakota. I'm home on a visiting family on vacation, but wanted to take part in this meeting because it's it's an important piece for the project and an important consultation with you all. So I'll give you a little overview building on what Sabrina mentioned. So we're redeveloping the parking and the access and like vehicular access and parking, kind of keeping some of the original basic kind of flow through, but it's all being adjusted to account for the access and the boat drop off and accessibility, and allowing for the fire trucks and emergency vehicles to make their way to and through the site. So that's it looks similar to what is currently out there, but not quite the same as far as the parking area and the vehicular access goes. And then the rest of the park, we are working hard to retain as many of the existing trees as possible throughout the park. So it's a lot of what the site design looks like is responding to where those trees are located and the limitations that imposes, but the value of those trees is such that it's worth going through the effort and retaining as many of them as we can. So you see what you see here is the dark gray pathways are paved, like the asphalt. The brown pathways would be a granular material with a stabilizer, so they're also very highly accessible. And so it's a binder. It's a small kind of aggregate, small stone material that gets bound together with an organic binder. And then certainly the surfacing materials are not entirely fleshed out yet, but in the more prominent areas we're anticipating using some sort of a paver, or or it could be specialty concrete, something a little more refined. But overall, we'll be replacing the existing playground and expanding the playground to the I guess west and south of the current footprint, and adding a mix of different play equipment. The surfacing for the playground will be like poured in place resilient surfacing, like you will likely have seen elsewhere. I think Maffeo Sutton is largely resilient surfacing, so it'll be a mix of that, which is the kind of purple or periwinkle color, and then the more tan color is the wood chips, and there's also a small sand play area, utilizing natural play equipment constructed of natural materials, largely wood. Also including things like a roll-on merry-go-round, wheelchair accessible merry-go-round, and some trampolines, and a 3-bay swing set, which would include two standard kind of slings, like just the belt swings, and a basket or nest swing, and then as well as an accessible chair swing, and a toddler seat as well. So the pathways will be, there's kind of accessible routes throughout that will lead you from anywhere in the park to anywhere in the park. Some of them are perhaps a bit indirect. There's a significant grade change from the top of the park, where we're connecting at Victoria Avenue down to the shoreline. So that's something has to be negotiated. So you see some of the pathways don't go directly from point A to point B, and that is an effort to keep the grades within accessible allowances. So what you see here are the second of our 2 slides for the landscape that were included in the presentation. These are showing you different ranges for the running slopes of the pathways. So the purple, kind of pinkish purple, is the 0 to 5% slope, and you can see that leads you from the parking areas and from the main through the primary plazas to all of the primary destinations in the park. They could have also extended through the playground following that purple color, because that will also be under 5%. And then there's the kind of 5 to 8.3%, which is that's considered a ramp in the building accessibility handbook for the BC Building Code, and that is in blue, and that is some of the kind of secondary pathways. Will be in that range, and there are a couple locations that are 8.3% to 12 or 13% grade, and that only occurs in a couple locations where there are existing slopes and existing grades that require us to have steeper pathways. So throughout the site there will be accessible seating, benches with armrests, picnic tables. We'll have extended benches on one side that extend the full width, and on the other side they will be shortened, so there will only be 1 or 2 seated spaces and a wheelchair space, as well as wheelchair access on the ends. The pads will be big enough to allow navigation around the picnic tables themselves. At the kind of at number 7, if you can see make out the numbers there, the beachside plaza. There's a covered area with picnic tables under it as well for shade and comfort. Then there's also an accessible drinking fountain and an outdoor shower, which has one side is kind of standard high shower head and foot wash. The other side is a accessible height shower with a push button within which is reachable from a wheelchair, and it also will also have grab bars. So that's right at the beach there. At the beach itself, we're looking to currently the much of the beach is very narrow and steep. Kind of 2/3 of the beach is like that, just the existing conditions. But we're looking to expand the beach area by removing a portion of wall and pulling the grade back into what is now the green space in the park, and are also exploring the idea of pushing the beachhead out into the lake by just adding sand. We are looking into the kind of permissibility of that approach. So that would reduce the slope of the beach itself, kind of across the breadth of it. So that would make it also make it more accessible, including at the location where the Moby mat is currently being deployed. So it would be reduce the slope there for the access onto and along the beach. So the things like the accessible fishing dock will remain and will connect to that, and that'll stay in place. The boat handling area will be another location that is stabilized granular, so will be an accessible surface as well, and including onto the new dock for the paddling club. And there's for parking, I believe there's 36 spaces proposed currently overall, and two accessible spaces. So and those are located just across from the community building, the boat storage. One thing that was called out on the plan here is one of the locations that the slope is a bit steeper than the others is in front of the community boat storage building, because the street slopes there. The existing condition is that the street there is steeper than the 8.3%. So there's a potential to change the crossing location at the cost of 1 or 2 parking spaces. Call that in blue there, with that note and that the dashed line. And I think that pretty much covers it for what we're proposing for the park. I'm gonna give it back to Bree.
Thank you, Justin. Just to add to that, currently the accessible drop-off and accessible parking is shown at the end of Victoria Road at the entry to the park, but we're also considering an accessible drop-off location directly in front of the community building. It's in progress at the moment.
So like a fire pit?
Accessible drop-off?
Yeah.
No, for people to get dropped off directly in front of the building. Yeah, if that makes sense. Thank you, Justin. I will now hand it back to Sabrina.
Okay. Well, now you have a great overview over the park itself, but we want to focus on the community building. Just perhaps we can go let me go 2 slides back. I just want to make sure everyone knows where the building is on the site. So you see that white outline, like the white hatch, that's the community building with boat storage underneath. So thank you. On this slide, you can see 2 very schematic rendering views. So the building itself has 3 levels: the top level, a mid-level, and a bottom level. The top level is where the community level is, which means it has the community multi-purpose room and the training facilities for the paddling club. And what's special here is that this level sits actually higher than Victoria Ave and the rest of the parking lot. And the reason for that is that underneath we have the boat storage, and the boat storage needs a certain amount of clear floor to ceiling height. So that community level really sits almost like on a plinth on top of that boat storage. And that's very important to understand, because to get up to that level, we do need on the one side where it's steeper, we have stairs, and on the other side, which is closer to, I guess, the south side of Victoria Ave, there's a ramp. And we're utilizing the existing sidewalk to be kind of like the first part of the ramp, and then we turn around and have a second ramp that ramps up to the entrance to the building. So the top level has a community building. The bottom level with direct access to the park, as well as the floating docks on the water. That is the boat storage for the paddling club. And in between, there's another level. It's where the public washrooms are located, and those are facing the park side with level access to the park. So they're almost on a split level. And you can imagine the lower level where the boats are, that's the heavy, very durable building with built out of concrete. It protects the boats, but also provides this strong plinth for the upper level community building, which will be built of a lighter construction, likely of local timber, with a metal cladding and nice wood accents where it's where we have community openings. So that's the high level concept for the exterior of the building.
Thank you, Sabrina. Just before moving on, to reinforce what Sabrina just said, with the 3 separate levels in this building, it's almost like 3 separate buildings. Each level has different uses, different users, and they are not connected to each other. Accessibly or inaccessibly, the access is from the exterior, and it's the same for everyone. So access is equitable through all levels. Okay, we will take you through the building from the top down, starting with the community level. So if you can imagine moving down Victoria Avenue, you'll have the community building on your right. At the entrance, we have both stair access and sloped. We don't want to call it a ramp because it's a shallow ramp. It's not a steep ramp, so we want to kind of make it as comfortable and accessible as possible. We envision that to be maybe something like concrete with some integrated planters, so it'll be kind of a lovely, open, accessible entrance. And then from there will be what we call the breezeway, which is kind of a portal through the building with views over the lake. So you can go straight through the building to a lovely outdoor terrace that is also accessible and have views over the lake. There are accessible paths through all public spaces at the community level, including, as Sabrina mentioned, the community room, which is kind of a multi-purpose room that has a little kitchenette and equipment storage and can be used for a variety of purposes. That will be on your left, and on the right-hand side, there's a little corridor that has access to 2 washrooms, one of which is accessible. And then on the right-hand side is the training room with 2 little offices that serve the training facility for the paddling clubs. And both the community room, the breezeway, and the training facility have access to that outdoor patio, or outdoor terrace, I should say. Just touching on building access a little bit more, as mentioned, on the left-hand side of the building, closer to the park, we have stair access, and on the right-hand side is a sloped path up to the main entry of the building. We are planning to have automatic door openers at all entry doors, including access to the outdoor terrace and accessible washrooms. We plan to have accessible hardware on all public access doors. And the accessible drop-off is under discussion, but in the slide, we show it dashed in blue at Victoria Avenue, adjacent to the sloped path up to the building. We're still in early design stage at this point, so just a note that we are not currently showing handrails, high contrast nosings, guardrails, that sort of thing, but as we develop the design, we will look at integrating those items and detailing them. Moving down to the public washroom level, which, as Sabrina mentioned, is accessed from the park. The public washroom level contains a bank of washrooms with level access. There are 5 washrooms total, including 2 accessible washrooms, and one of those accessible washrooms also will include an adult change table. Both accessible washrooms will have automatic door operators. And then also at this level is an electrical room and a janitor room. Zooming in a little bit on the washrooms, or shifting our focus here. The image on the left shows the public washroom level with the 5 washrooms that are all grouped together with the 2 accessible washrooms. And then on the right-hand side shows a plan of the community level with the 2 washrooms accessed off the little corridor off the breezeway. One of them is accessible and the other is not accessible. And then zooming in a little bit more, we have an example image on the left that shows some of the features that we plan to implement in the accessible washrooms, such as grab bars, emergency call button, and other features that you would expect in an accessible washroom, adult change table. We also plan to look at using color and high contrast finishes to improve accessibility and wayfinding. And on the right-hand side shows the plans zoomed in on the 3 accessible washrooms in the project. On the left side, the 2 public washroom level washrooms, and on the right-hand side, the accessible washroom at the community level. All washrooms are private, non-gendered washrooms, and we've made efforts to locate both the accessible and non-accessible washrooms together to ensure that there is equitable use and choice for users. And now moving on to the bottom level, the boat storage level. As mentioned, the boat storage level is fully separated from the washroom and community levels with no direct access, no internal or external stair. The boat storage level is accessed from the northeast towards the lake for the paddling club. And it is primarily for boat storage only, containing 3 large bays of boat storage and a mechanical room and a storage room. I think now we would like to open it up for discussion and feedback.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So I will take a speakers list, and I do want to give everyone a chance to talk today. So if you can raise, if you have 2 items you want to raise, and then I'll move to the next speaker, and then I will come back around. So I'm going to start with Sean, and then Richard, and then I'm going to go to Jocelyn and Bay.
Thank you. Great presentation. I love the building design, and it's very exciting to see this expanded space. One question I have really is about the docks. So it looks like there's some great accessible paths within the park in and of itself, but also the park is, it seems like most of the accessibility is land-based, and I'm interested and curious about accessible docks. There are lots of ADA compliant and various accessible dock systems that allow for increased access to the water, and is primarily a site for water-based activities and water-based access. I'm curious about whether we can include options for all of the docks to have full, like ramps going down into the water. There's lots of options out there for that sort of stuff. So that's my first question. And then my second one is maybe just some clarity around the zones from the map. So zone 3 is marked in the legend as a drop-off zone, but it also looks like it's a food truck location, and then other maps have drop-offs in front of the building. I don't know if that's the clarity point. And then the 2 accessible spaces might be small, but I don't know if there's other considerations around that. So yeah, the first one is around accessible docks. The second one is just around the accessible parking and drop-off in general, and some clarity around if those zones have been marked and identified or if they're still being worked on. Thanks.
So I'm expecting that question to be fielded by the presenters or staff. So who's up?
So yeah, I guess my question is, has it been presented that we would like accessible docks also? And who can answer that question? So that's my first one.
Okay, through the chair, I'm going to speak first, but then Sabrina and Angela and also Justin. So very much a big part of this is accessible dock. There's already an accessible fishing dock, and that will be maintained. And then as you look at the picture or you come down Victoria Avenue, go to the middle of the park and turn right along the edge of the building. The dock is in the front. You'll see that it has a fairly wide apron in a T shape. And the intention with having the access be a gentle grade down from Victoria Road is to allow for that access from all aspects of the park. And you'll notice there's a surface that allows for accessibility in terms of the materials, leading from the front apron of the boathouse storage, but also from the park onto the dock. And I think maybe I will defer to the experts to give a bit more detail. Thank you.
And so, sorry. Before then, I'll just clarify also that my main question is about getting from the dock into and out of the water. So not inherently getting onto the dock, which I can see is done very well, but like, what do you do once you're on it? Thanks.
I might hand it over to Justin to speak about the dock portion. But prior to that, your other question was regarding kind of the accessible paths and parking and drop-off at the park entrance. So as mentioned, we're in schematic design, so it's still early days, and we're discussing some of those locations and which might be more beneficial to users. In the landscape plan, it shows the accessible drop-off at the end of Victoria, just at the start of the park. And along Victoria, when you turn to the left for parking, there's accessible parking on that side. Now, it is a little bit further from the community building. It's more clearly adjacent. It's closer, it's most beneficial to the park users, but it's maybe a little bit less convenient to access the community building. So we would welcome feedback on whether that would be preferable to have kind of a wheelchair accessible parking stall and drop off closer to the community building versus closer to the park entrance. But to answer your question, it's still in progress, and we welcome your feedback.
Did you have a particular take, Sean, on the location, or just?
I would probably defer that to maybe people who have a bit more experience in figuring out the widths and what makes sense for large drop-off vehicles and big vans and things like that that need to have chairs come out of the back. The front zone, that zone 3, made sense. It already is marked. That's why I'm confused. It's marked as a drop-off zone, but then it also says it's a food truck location. So obviously, if there's a food truck there, you can't drop that off. I think any of those would be fine, largely with the big vehicles. I mean, I know from our experiences that at NACL, we will sometimes, when we can't reliably park somewhere because our vans are massive, like they're the big sprinters and the whatevers that have can take like 10 or 12 people. So we'll drop people off and then go park on the street or something and then pick people up. So really, probably what they want is access to the park in those cases and a zone that's reserved just for very quick drop-off from very large vehicles, because they wouldn't likely be able to park in those accessible spots either. They're just too small, and so they would just drop off. So that, or also in front of the building seems fine. It looks like in one of the plans that is an accessible drop-off. Those 3 spots in front of the building itself look like accessible drop-off zones. So I can see it's sort of marked in blue there as a drop-off zone, which also makes sense. That is ample in size, and I think people would be fine to get to the beach from there. So yeah, either of those. But just wanting some clarity on what was being marked out for those, because it looks like it was different on a few of the different documents. So,
Okay.
but I will defer that to others too. Thanks.
I can maybe jump in if we can go back to the overall park plan there. So the area marked 3 is kind of a all-purpose drop-off area. So it's with the white hatching. I would just realize now that you bring it up that it's hatched, and the food trucks are also hatched. The food truck locations, there's 3 of them, and they are up on the plaza with the black rectangles with the hatching surrounding. Kind of there's two to the I guess the northwest of the drop off area along the edge of the plaza, and then another one to the southwest of at the end of the drop off area. So those would function as food truck parking locations. Potentially, but the drop-off area itself, Mark 3, would remain as a short-term drop-off space. It also works as for the boats that are vehicles with towing boats would pull into that space and then back down the ramp on the relatively on kind of competition days and things. It's not incredibly. My understanding is it's not a super common occurrence, but in the days when there are boats coming and going, they would use that drop-off area as well, just to pull into and then back down the ramp. And then as far as the docks go, they kind of improvements to so the existing dock is the far left of the plan, marked 14. So again, what we're doing there is really improving the access to the dock. So it's currently got a very short little gangway that is relatively steep slope. So we are proposing to kind of increase the length of the gangway by about 2.5 times to reduce the slope down from the kind of on land down to the dock level. So that would improve access to the dock. As far as the access, getting people into the water through kind of harnesses and that kind of thing, it isn't something that has been part of the program to date, as far as I know, and hasn't really been explored for 14. I know we'd have to look at the kind of engineering and what kind of weight that would carry and how that would be integrated, but that's certainly something we could explore moving forward. And the number 4, the boat dock, I think we haven't looked at that in any great detail as of yet, other than the kind of size of it. And then that's been about the extent of our investigation or exploration of that amenity.
Okay, thank you for those answers. Yeah, I think, I know it's early in the process, but I know there's a lot of interest in that dock itself as far as the new dock and making it as accessible as possible. And I'm really hoping that once we dial in the more broad plans, we can have a chance to actually talk about that dock itself and maybe apply for grants and things like that might allow us to really boost the true accessibility there. So I think for today, we kind of need to think a little bit like bigger picture and not hyper focus on that dock itself, just because we're not there. But I'll just say, I know this committee is super interested in making sure that dock is built in a way that we can accommodate things like lifts and the easier ways for people to get into boats, because that's sort of the entire point of the accessibility of this project. So thank you. I have quite a speakers list. So Richard, you are up next.
All right. Just to confirm, did you receive my email on the notes?
Yes, and I did send you a text about it, but I'll just reaffirm that Richard had sent in a list with a number of suggestions. They will all be included and shared with the designers, so don't feel like you have to hit all of them, but please mention your top 2.
Yeah, so right now, as it stands, so I used to be very involved with racing on the water and that with the university team. So if someone falls into the water and needs to, survive from the cold winters that we have, because often people train in the winter months too, we need to have like a space for people to be able to warm up fast. So having like hot water access to warm up in the showers is really important, and also having like the access points up to those spaces be all right to walk on, even when wet, especially because if people are paddling in the rain and all that, like they're going to be soaking wet. So having like thinking about the access points from the shoreline to the those spaces is extremely important, because that's like a life-saving thing. And then I was I had points about the dock, but I will leave that for another time, I suppose, since we're focusing on the other aspects. The pathways around the park and like the beach and the playground, I was kind of curious about. So having like edging, well, the thing is, let's not reinvent things that we already are doing successful on. So like the Westwood Lake project has a lot of aspects that we could apply to this space. Especially with the maps that are tactile, especially with the wayfinding, the edging that's on pathways, and the lighting aspects. All those things have been extremely successful, so let's repeat that for this project. I think is extremely important. And on top of that, like we have successful things with say the hearing aid stations, the open loop system that's now at a lot of our like terminals. If we install those in earlier on, then it'll actually save us money than installing it later. But that also includes like AV equipment and that to be able to really use that multi-use space so that everyone can use it. And considering it like acoustics for people with hearing aids in those like meeting spaces too.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great points. Okay, I'm going to go to Jocelyn next.
Hi, such a pleasure to see how this is shaping up. I've had the pleasure of working with the kayak club on their physically accessible kayak equipment, and my organization organizes a couple of events around that in the summer, and we love this park for that, despite its many barriers. So I'm really so excited. My 2 things, I'll leave the doc as well. I can send a suggestion about it to consider as well. But um, one of the things I get concerned about is we're getting more successful at prioritizing inclusion and accessibility in our recreation spaces, and it's commendable. But I think we look at our parking allocations with the eyes of not including and not so inclusively, like we stick to a certain minimum. But I think if you understand that accessibility and accessible recreation spaces are still not the norm across the city. So more people with disabilities will end up going to the accessible places. So to, TLDR, I think 2 accessible spaces is not enough.
Agreed.
I'm curious if that other or the other parking area that's kind of by the highway is going to stay there, because when my organization does our event there, we like station a canoe and kayak club volunteer down by that parking area to push people up the hill or like along that trail, because there's not enough accessible spaces. And if that parking is still there, then can we not appoint more accessible parking closer to the park so that, to distribute it a bit better? That would be one thought. I think my other, where am I? I'm reading my notes. Oh yeah, I had a question about the community like amenity room. I can't. I am sadly lacking in the metric category, so I don't know how big that is. If someone could, like, how many people is that for? I think I saw 60 meters squared or something like that.
It was 90 meters squared,
90.
yeah. Ms. Gopal Singh, are you able to jump in on either of those points?
But in an area that size, would you say?
Through the chair, we'll let our architects answer that one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for both previous speakers for your valuable feedback. That's super great feedback, and we'll absolutely consider it as we develop the design further. Regarding the community level, the space could, depending on the layout, I don't have off the top of my head the metric conversion to square footage, but I would say at least 60 or upwards of that, depending on how it's being used. Currently, we're showing 6 long tables, kind of back to back, through in that space to accommodate some large event or birthday party or something like that.
Thank you so much for that. So that's kind of what I guessed, just based on the like diagram of the tables, and it's something to consider that you have just one accessible washroom on that level, and then 2. And I get that like 80% of the days that this space is being used, it will have like 4 people in the building, but once you have an event for that many people and it's bookable for a wedding or whatever, I don't know. My organization could fill that room with probably 40 people, of which 2/3 are wheelchair users. And granted, that's not also your most common situation, but getting down to the bottom isn't super practical for everybody. So my thought would be to swap one out or slightly expand one of those washrooms, just to make there be 2 on the upstairs near that room. Yeah, that's what I'll leave it. It looks great. I'm super excited.
That's a really good point, though. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I have Bay up next.
Hi there. I have a couple of questions. I'll start with the community level. I'm just wondering who has access to this? Is it literally going to be you have to book a wedding for a substantial fee? Is it ever going to be accessible to the public? Is that terrace going to be accessible to the public, or is that exclusively for club members? I'm just kind of curious. I see a lot of space for an infrastructure for the rowing and water clubs there, but I'm not really sure um, how open that is to the community to participate in. So I'm curious about that. I'm also curious about the retaining wall that's down by the beach. I can't really tell in the drawings where that is, if it's staying, and um, how there's sort of a level access into the water on the beach. If you can show me that, that would be really cool. Like I see there's like, it looks like a patio down by where the retaining wall is. And there's like a, goes back and forth for the trail to get there. So is there like a smooth transition down from there? And then I do have one more thing to say, but it's more for the city because you folks are just designing the infrastructure for the park, which is accessibility from transit stops. It is a fairly level street, but there's no sidewalk. A lot of people park on the road, so you're really pushed into the traffic area while walking along there with children or other things. There are a couple of buses that go near there, and I would recommend that during the summer they occasionally have buses that pop down there and back, just to drop people off who otherwise can't handle that stretch of road. I'm not sure if the city has plans for sidewalks or even a painted line that shows a pedestrian zone would be really helpful. There's tons of people because the parking is almost always quite full there, and there's lots of people who park on the road, and then they're walking with their kids and their dogs and all their swim gear and stuff. It can get kind of chaotic on the street there.
Okay, thank you for that comment, and hopefully we can address your questions now.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair to Ms. Kinraid, in terms of community access, if we could put up the picture of the building, please. Thank you. Very much so, this is a community space. So to the corner of the building facing the lake, as you come down Victoria, the far corner to the, which direction would it be? West, I think. That big 90 square meters, or if we think in square feet, just under 1,000 square feet. Yeah, just around 1,000 square feet for those of us who think in feet. That space with the kitchen and equipment room is very much for community access. So it would be bookable in the same way that you book the Rotary Field House, the rooms at Beban or Bowen. It is very much a community accessible space along with the terrace.
But there is a cost associated with booking those
Yes, there is a
spaces.
cost associated with booking, and the fees that we have in place for public, private, nonprofits, as in our fee users would be applied. And so we see this space being bookable by the public and also being accessible for different programs we might run, whether it's yoga, kids program, seniors program. So similar like you would see our other facilities booked. Then in terms of the training space and the agreements that we're actually negotiating with the different user groups, whether it's the canoe and kayak and rowing, we're in the process of working those out and looking at ways to potentially have shared use with those spaces. It is a city facility, and like we have user groups, whether it's the Seven Potato Society or others, we have different arrangements, and so we're in the process of working that out. But to be very clear, this is a community building with community access, and the terrace during certain hours would be accessible to the community at no cost when it's not being booked. So again, similar to how we do our other park spaces. So I did want to touch on the question about the showers that did come up for us around safety. And I actually have here our Deputy Chief, Stu Kenning. And one of the questions we posed to him as a first responder is how we deal with hypothermia. And interestingly, warming people up through hot showers is not the way to go because it can cause great distress and trauma to the body. It's an interesting thing that perhaps is counterintuitive. And so at this point, we are not, unless we're getting feedback that comes through this committee, from an emergency planning perspective and dealing with hypothermia, warm or hot showers are not the way that first responders deal with hypothermia. So that was an interesting lesson for me, and it's probably something that's evolved over time. So I thought I'd just mention that. And then there was also a question about parking, and I believe the speaker was speaking about parking perhaps on the Ministry of Highways dock access. Would that be correct, Ms. Mathen? I think I was going to try and clarify that there's other access to the park through a residential area, but it comes off the highway with that parking there. And so we are not, as the city, in charge of that parking. I'm not sure if I misunderstood the question, but I thought I would make a note of that. And then in terms of access to transit, part of our planning, while yes, we're focused on the site, you'll notice that I do have the manager of transportation, Jamie Rose, here. And one of the things that is going on that complements this site is the Norwell Transit Exchange near Country Club. And while they're, and looking at all the connectivity that leads us to Loudon. And so I won't speak too much on that because we'll have an opportunity to hear from him a bit later, unless he's got something imminent he can say about that. But connection through to the site is important. And in terms of the note that was made about buses or vehicles coming down, that's something we can pass back through to the regional district. So I hope that answers a few questions, but we're definitely thinking about how people from the neighborhood can access the site on foot, on other mobility devices, and by vehicle. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go to Linda now.
There you go. It is so delightful to hear architects talk about the difference between a slope path and a ramp and get all of that right. It's lovely. So thank you. I had the idea, just back to the dock, of a permanent Moby mat if something could be paved to go right into the water, but that's likely for later. My notes are mostly on the slide where you have the possible location for an accessible crossing. Yeah, that one. It doesn't go anywhere. Like, right? So it's a crossing that we would make accessible, but that needs to be to somewhere and from somewhere. And so just putting it there, all the crosswalks need to be accessible. So you've got two drawn out between the building and the parking lot. Maybe back to that first slide. With the, yeah, that one. So there's two white crosswalks. Those would need to be accessible. If you were thinking of that potential accessible crossing here as a drop-off space, one of the problems would be, like, say you're in a handy dart, it will completely block all access to the park. And they are stopped for, 10 minutes, depending on how difficult it is to hook someone up or not. So I would suggest, I don't see the point of an accessible spot right there, a crossing right there, because there's nowhere to go to except into the building. And I too was thinking about access to the park via wheelchair, stroller, scooter, and that's likely a city thing. But trying not to direct people behind cars. So I don't know, there's a little triangle there in the parking with trees. If you could make that actually into a sidewalk, that allows people to move towards the beach, but not be going behind vehicles. I mean, that's just an idea, but when wheelchair users are directed, the only path they can go is behind vehicles, they're in danger. And vehicles are not going to want to run over someone either. So, oh, and I also had, is it possible, and certainly Jocelyn would be the expert on that, to possibly spread accessible parking spots around, given that not everybody might want to go into the community building? Maybe people are geared more towards going to the beach right away or something, but that's not my bailiwick. So just really, really beautifully done and very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to address a couple of those comments. First off, thank you very much for the thoughtful feedback regarding the possible accessible path to the community building. We threw that as a suggestion since the sloped access path to the community building is more on the right-hand side, but totally understand what you're saying about kind of what else it relates to, and it sounds like the more ideal location might be what we have currently shown with the white accessible paths through the parking. And regarding the feedback about possibly spreading out the accessible parking stalls, I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's something we'll definitely consider.
Thank you. So I've got a second time speakers list going. So those of you who've spoken and raised your hand, you're on my list there. But at the moment, I'm going to go to Nicole.
So on the parking thing, without that potential accessible parking spot crossing, the blue one, there is no way that is not the most extreme grade to get to the bottom of the path up to the community building. Am I correct? Because it's black from along the front, and then to get to the start of the sloped path, what's the grade of the parking lot? Sorry.
I'd like to hand that one over to Justin.
Yeah, so the grade of the in front where the black dashed line is, I believe it's about 11%,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of existing slope of the street too. So
Right.
yeah, so that's in excess of the upper
Yeah.
range that we're showing there.
So I think that Linda's comment makes a lot of sense based on where the parking spots the accessible parking spots are currently. That blue doesn't make much sense. But if you add some accessible parking spots at the top of the, maybe where it starts, then that makes a lot more sense. Also, leaving that as a potential accessible crossing, anybody coming in along Victoria Avenue, I'm not sure what the sidewalks look like, but they're going to come across that first crosswalk and not have to. If they could not have to go onto the road, if they could get along, it's is that the white stuff? I don't know. Between those two trees and across the blue, if they could do that instead of going onto the driveway, there would be a benefit. I don't think you want to get rid of the accessible crossing down closer to the beach, but I do think you need to have some accessible parking up the top. And my only completely unrelated is the playground. And I'm just curious about the reason for wanting wood chips and pour in place rubber, because I can't tell where the swings are and where what is over rubber and what is over wood chips. But I'm curious for why to use, is there a reason for both? And why we would be excluding those who can't navigate the wood chips from accessing, say, the swing that if, I'm assuming one of those is the swing over the wood chips.
Yeah, I can respond to the playground question certainly. So the resilient rubber surfacing accesses all of the accessible play equipment like the nest or basket swing and the swing with the accessible kind of harness chair, the roll on merry-go-round, wheelchair accessible merry-go-round, and all of the seating. The wood chips are added in, and honestly, they're very good. You know, the resilient surfacing is a very expensive element, and it's a relatively large footprint for the playground, and so it's in an attempt to kind of mitigate some of the price of those elements. And the if you see the element that's kind of a climb around piece of play equipment at the bottom left, the accessible access, the rubber reaches that, so you could get onto that piece of play equipment off of the rubber, and yeah, where the slide discharges from the tall tower is also on the rubber. I mean, it certainly can be pushed and pulled around, but right now it's like all of the more accessible play elements are accessed via the rubber surfacing, and the chips are kind of in the less, I guess, desirable locations for accessibility sense. And then there's a bit of sand as well, because this just to add the sand play element to it.
So the sand's at the top, is it?
Yeah, it's kind of around the tree. Yeah, it's in that kind of egg-shaped egg-shaped zone
Okay.
under that existing tree.
And there's
standing
is there any concern with the sand being tracked onto the rubber and degrading the rubber more quickly?
It's not uncommon to have that as a mix. It certainly is will be a maintenance. Depend on your maintenance practices. That will certainly need to be kind of swept back in from time to time. But yeah, so it's not a huge concern, but will have some sort of impact as well.
What about shrinking the footprint of the park as it is, and like removing that sand element from the playground, considering that there is an entire beach there, and then you'd be able to put the budget from removing that sand patch and the maintenance required with it into having the rubberized surface around all of the play elements? Is that a potential? And I'm wondering how many trees are slated for removal to facilitate the expansion of the playground area.
So I would have to look at the numbers, but the sand pit, the sand play areas, not going to kind of balance the rest of the rubber, but that's certainly something we can look at. We currently are not showing any trees being removed that are specific to the expansion of the playground.
Okay, thank you. Tammy?
I was going to talk about the playground too, but bravo for putting some accessible elements into the playground. We have a lot of schools that actually go to Rathtrevor Beach, which has like very little accessibility to the beach, and so I'm looking at this facility as being potential field trips for schools to go because it's more accessible. But I have a question about the accessible shower. Is it accessed from the patio or is it accessed from the sand?
It would be both. I mean, that the intention is that that's an on-grade transition from that plaza onto the sand. So that it could be, you could go from either direction.
Okay, because wheelchairs don't really go on the sand very well.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe where
Yeah,
the
and I think
permanent Moby mat idea could come in.
It's quite a long ways from the water. Yeah, I don't know, but it's interesting that you it's great that you did the wheelchair accessible shower. But just knowing that if it's on the sand, it's not accessible from the sand.
Through the chair, there is access through an accessible path just the other side of it. But you're wanting to see accessibility from the water straight to the shower?
I was just wondering why it was placed kind of really close to the sand. And I guess for people getting in and out of the sand kind of thing. But for a wheelchair accessible thing to be in the sand is a question.
Through the chair, I might mention there is an existing Moby mat at the park, and the location of that could be tweaked based on these other accessible elements going in. And so we would continue to maintain one, maybe two Moby mats as part of this as well, because I think that they've been a very good experiment and pilot supported by this group, and so we continue to use that technology. Thank you.
And then just for the community building, if I were to look at using that community room, can you tell me what's in the kitchenette? Like, I'm assuming, like, oftentimes it's great to have like a commercial kitchen if you're going to be having an event where you're going to be eating. So is it possible to have elements of a commercial kitchen?
Through the chair, do you want to talk about what's in there, and I can talk about the rationale?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Currently, the kitchen is planned to be more of a simple prep kitchen. There will be a sink, fridge, microwave, no stove, no kind of extensive exhaust. It'll be kind of a very simple prep kitchen.
Okay.
Through the chair, maybe I might talk to some of the reasons why. And it was a combination of looking at what facilities we have that do have that, and then the costs of the internal workings for that type of kitchen, and then the flexibility of the space. So the kitchen is designed so it can be closed off. So if you have a group of elders or younger people doing some activity that's very vigorous, you've got the whole room. And then if you need access to a small kitchen with a full fridge and places to prepare food but not cook it, that's accessible as well. So the reason was a balance of cost and what we have available around the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Is there, a suggestion would be to make in the interior upper level, to make both of the washrooms accessible washrooms, just because accessible washrooms are open to everyone, and I think that would address some of the concerns that we have around if we have large groups in there. And it looks to me like there's space to fit that in. If it does compromise a bit of space of one of the offices, I think that could be a fair trade-off. I'd wonder about making the more accessible parking spaces, that maybe that first row where you've got the two spaces, make that whole area accessible parking. Because we already understand there's limited parking on that site, and people who have the ability to park on neighboring streets and walk will, but I do think we need to prioritize those. But maybe there's a way that we create accessible parking spaces that are flex spaces, so at certain times they can be designated for accessible parking, and then at other times not. I think that's something we may need to look at. And as far as community concerns about the impact of using like recycled rubber surfaces and the leaching from that into water, and then how that meets with like accessibility needs, is there an alternate surface type that can be used, or is it like, what are the options that we have?
Thank you, Chair. First, touching on the request for two accessible washrooms at the community level, that's definitely something we can look into. That we understand the logic there, but we'll consider it as we develop the design. Same thing for the consideration about having the bay of accessible parking stalls and flexible accessible parking stalls. That's good feedback, and we'll definitely consider it. Regarding the the surface question, I will hand that over to Justin.
Yeah, so there currently isn't another type of surfacing for play areas that is kind of on par or equal with the rubberized surface. And is I would say about the bleaching off of the recycled rubber, in that it is a coated material, and it's also in this instance, a lot of it will go through the rubber into the subgrade and work through the subgrade of the soil before ever entering the lake, and the rest of it will be runs off onto landscape areas, and those have proven to be very efficient in removing the types of toxins that are a concern for kind of coho salmon mortalities and things. So in this instance, it's kind of addressed by the positioning and the functional aspects of the drainage system of the playground.
Okay, thank you. On to my second time speakers, Richard.
Thank you very much. I'm kind of thinking that this is going to be like quite attractive to people all throughout Vancouver Island, because currently as it stands, from my understanding and like research, the closest facility for like para athletes would be Vancouver. And like they have sent people all the way to the Paralympics and such because of their facility. And so having this space be fully accessible from the water, on top of the water, all the way to the space is extremely valuable. And like previous comments made, it will be extremely attractive to everyone on the island who is into parasports. Because this is a team-based thing, it often attracts diverse populations and such too. So like the pathways from the every point need to be accessible in terms of high contrast and edging, because like say if you're carrying a big boat, your view is obstructed anyways. And one thing that I was kind of thinking to answer the beach issue, what if we have a wheelchair friendly or accessible wheelchair that can actually go onto the sand, and that could be stored where the boats are actually getting stored. So that way, if somebody who doesn't have a wheelchair that can't go all terrain, let's call it, and wants to access the beach without the movie mat, then they can actually move more freely. Yeah. And secondly, we have a lot of amazing designs from our local Sunimo artists and the community, and canoeing and such is very much a part of the culture. So has any Indigenous artwork and cultural elements been sought into how we can apply that both to the playground and like the space itself to kind of more tell a full story of how our community is here? So, thank you.
Okay. Through the chair, if I might respond to the most recent comment. We had those conversations fairly recently about the nation endorsing one of their artists. And so that is part of the process and will continue. And in the audience, you might notice Jamie Brett-Sine, who is one of our events and culture coordinators. And so she has been responsible for a lot of the collaboration we see in the most recent years with Nanaimo. She's here for a reason, and we needed to just make sure that we had the conversation respectfully without first diving in with what we thought was best. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. And just regarding the first question, that's a really great idea regarding kind of the broader appeal of this facility for accessibility throughout the province and beyond. And we'll take that into consideration for sure. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I might add, some of the conversations around access from the dock to the water, these are things that we can actually put into the landscape plan and design. And then, as Councillor Eastmer said, start chipping off those elements where we can within the budget and where we can't, going after more funding. So one example, myself and actually our city manager had a tour of Rainbow Park in Whistler. And they had a very interesting hand pump mechanism which was non-electric that would allow somebody in a mobility device to safely enter the water at depth and come out. And so there's many different examples we have from our peer municipalities that balance maintenance, electrical connection, and safety for all users. So we have that, we're conscious of it, and I just say to our team that these are things that we can build in, even if we can't implement in the first year. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Jocelyn. Okay. Not seeing Jocelyn, I'm going to go to Linda.
Okay, just back to parking for a minute. I'm not familiar with the site, but if that grade in front of the community building is 11%, if the parking spots are also at a grade of 11%, they won't work. So parking spots have to be flat. Otherwise, it's just really difficult to get in and out. Things roll away, wheels roll away, chairs roll away. And there are two kinds of accessible parking spots. There's the narrower limited mobility that are meant for people with canes and walkers, and then the wider ones that often share an access aisle. You could differentiate between the two with signage, perhaps, but that might be a way to get more accessible parking in, because not everybody needs to unload a van. It's just an idea. So I think the flatness is really what triggered me. And certainly proximity to the slope, the ramp that does go into the building. That's all.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you. We will investigate.
Linda. Oh, wait, that was Linda. Bay.
Hello again. My question is just to come back to getting onto the beach there, that transition. I know that there's a retaining wall at the moment. I'm curious if that's remaining, if there's going to be more gradual ways down, not just for wheelchairs, but there's a lot of people with knee problems or back problems where stepping down from a significant retaining wall can be really dicey. But that retaining wall also does provide sort of built-in seating for people who can't sit on the sand. So I'm just curious what that is. Like, it looks like you've built, like, you're intending to build almost a patio right down by the sand, but I can't really read anything on here. I can't really tell exactly what you have planned down there.
Yeah, so I can take that. The retaining wall, the intention is to remove part of it, maybe just shy of half of it. It doesn't show up kind of clearly on this, but there's a section from the access to the existing dock, kind of at the left-hand side. Yeah, that pathway slopes kind of gently and consistently up to a point, and then swings back more significantly, and that's the point at which the retaining wall would start to be removed, and the intention there would be to address the condition you brought up about the slope of the sand from the pathway down to the water, to reduce that, so then make that a more gentle grade. In addition, we're also exploring the option of pushing the beach out into the lake, and where it's marked 11 out near the water line, there's a kind of dark line that's labeled as the high water mark, and that area would all be introduced, like pushed. That'd be all new sand beach area, kind of taken from the water side of things, or added to the water side of things, but taken from the lake. So the intention would be to create a slope that is closer to what you see on the existing beach at the south side, all the way across the length of the beach, which would significantly improve access to the water.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole?
With respect to accessible equipment, particularly a beach, like a sand wheelchair, possibly accessible other boating options. I know we talked about this up at Westwood, converting the old washroom site into some kind of storage that people could access via code or something. So with a brand new build, it would be, if we could find space that has exterior access that would allow you to have take a wide piece of accessible recreation equipment. Maybe down the line is where the money comes to actually buy the equipment, but as we are building a brand new at-grade building, it would be ideal to include a storage of that sort. And I know there's a rendering of one of the accessible bathrooms you brought up at the very beginning. And I think we've talked about in other designs, where there's those steps for children to access a sink. That step itself makes the wheelchair accessible sink no longer wheelchair accessible because they can't pull under it. So there either needs to be two sinks, one that has that step and one that is wheelchair accessible, or you have to come up with a different option for the small children that's not going to get in the way of all the other beautiful elements.
Thank you. And I think that picture also did include a visual of a lift, but it didn't sound like that's actually included in our design.
We're still early days, so we haven't fully detailed the accessible washroom, particularly the accessible washroom with adult change table, but we'll look into it. But yes, there was an accessible lift shown in the example image in the presentation.
We want it all. Okay.
Us too.
Thank you. Sean.
Yes, thank you. I know we're not inherently talking about the dock during this session, but as we think about sort of also improving the gangplank and that comes with an expense, there is a lot of interesting work being done around accessible swimming in outdoor spaces, most notably and close to us, North Van, I think, is investing in a pretty significant outdoor swimming facility. I'm not saying we want a 75,000, well, I do want a 75,000 square foot outdoor swimming accessible dock. We're not North Vancouver, that's fine, but it is a model to demonstrate how, like, when you build a dock, it's not inherently about lifts or transfers or those sorts of things. It is just about ensuring that you maybe don't necessarily just have steep drop-offs from the side of the dock into the water, so ramps to get into the water. Instead of having ladders to climb out, you maybe have steps. And you have a variety of different ways to get in and out, and that if redoing stuff with the gangplanks has an inherent cost to it that doesn't actually makes access to the thing more accessible, but doesn't make access to the water more accessible. Maybe it makes more sense than instead of saying, well, you can roll onto this dock and then not do anything, to back up and say, well, before we make this thing more accessible, maybe there's a way to defer that money and actually think about allocating that to make the whole dock an accessible access point into the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other comments or questions at this time on this project? Okay. And I know that Richard also provided some excellent feedback on the report itself, and I know, like, I found it a little bit hard to parse just because of the size of some of the elements, and so we'll share those as well. But really appreciate the presentation and all of the work that's going into this, and thank you so much for involving this committee early in the process so that you can give feedback that will be meaningfully considered and incorporated. So I look forward to seeing the next draft of this whenever that comes to pass.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful being here. Lots of great feedback, and we look forward to it in incorporating your feedback and making this facility as inclusive and accessible as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So moving into other business, we have a verbal update on the OV Art Center accessibility and parking from Jamie Rose, our manager of transportation. Come on down.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. I was actually kind of regretful that I wasn't at the last meeting to participate in the discussion around this, because I kind of would have hoped to have been able to answer those questions then. But just to let everybody know, I've had a chance to take a look at the site. And if I remember correctly, there's generally the question of how to ensure that getting to the facility is accessible. And parking was one question, access via a curb let down or ramp, and then the condition of the overall sidewalk were, I think, the three key points. If I've missed anything, please let me know. So I have had a look at it, and starting with the sidewalk, it's not perfect, but right now it's actually in pretty decent condition. And so there's other areas of our city where we have much more significant issues with respect to smoothness and continuity. And so looking at it through our typical process for sidewalk maintenance, it's not one that we would focus attention on right now. There may be another opportunity in the future to come back to that and refresh some of it, but that's not something we're going to get into just yet. With respect to parking, there are some accessible spots in the area, but they're not really that close to the facility. So we can definitely add one or two spots functionally right at the front door or right immediately adjacent to the front door. That's not a problem at all. Likewise, having a curb let down, we can include that in the work that's being done with that. I think if I remember, the conversation revolved a little bit around the sense that having the letdown was also connected to having a crosswalk, and those aren't explicitly related in, features. We can have one without the other. And so with respect to the crosswalk, we've had a lot of conversations in various forums about crosswalks right now and simply marked crosswalks. It's really, unfortunately, they don't seem to be adding a lot of benefit. Really, to make crossing more conspicuous and more effective and bluntly safer for everybody, we need something much more significant than just road markings. And so we can put that as part of a future review to explore something more substantial there. But I think in the short term, the focus is to get the ramp in and get the parking spots right in front of the building. So I'm hoping that achieves the intent and desires of the committee.
I think there was some concern that, yes, accessible spots would be great, but are they accessible if they're on that grade? And like, do we have examples in the city where we have accessible parking spaces that are on a grade like that?
So we have accessible parking spaces on Old Victoria Road already.
Okay.
There's maybe 100 meters south on the opposite side of the road. And so it's still on the basic linear grade of the road. There's very little we can do to change the road grade to accommodate a parking spot per se. You know, in a parking lot, definitely we can get that to sort of sub 6% grades to make sure that things aren't rolling away or doors aren't closing on people. But on the road, we have a lot of other things that we're trying to balance off.
So is there any like committee input at this point? Like, is proceeding with accessible parking spots in front of the building, even though there's a relatively good grade there, is that going to be something that we back, Sean?
Only because I'm connected with the theater community. So I think one of the things around the curb cut, part of it was getting out of your vehicle and being able to get up to the sidewalk. Part of it was sort of part and parcel with because there's just not a ton of parking. It is all street parking effectively, unless you park in one of the lots further away. But that if you park on the other side of the road, that you have to cross the street and then a curb cut to get up onto the curb to get into the thing, because the only other way is to go either all the way down or all the way up to the top, which is impractical. And then I think it might have been Jocelyn's point the last time around that parking on the other side is fine, except there's no sidewalk. So you're essentially getting out of your vehicle and into traffic. So it does become sort of a holistic thing to it. I think accessible parking is still desirable for people that don't, because the only other alternative is to go all the way up to kind of the top of Victoria or down to the bottom. So keeping that reserved, because people do, I can say, having gone to that theater a lot, right in front is sort of, it's a pretty desirable spot. So keeping that available to people who want to come see shows makes a lot of sense, even though it is still an imperfect solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Richard?
I have like some reservations about calling some of these locations that are parking spots as accessible spots, because if you're having to literally take a journey to the parking spot, then it's not so much accessible because of the distance, right? Or if it's like on a severe hill. So more having it be like wheelchair accessible, like, or mobility, like accessible, more accessible. I don't know, like, because it's not ideal, and we all know this, right? It's a reality of being on the hill there. Right.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, but yeah, it's like what constitutes an accessible spot, and that when we say accessible, it's a very, very broad term, and
yeah, we use
people have specific needs. I see Jamie Rose ready to answer here.
So I think what I might want to pick up on is we refer to it as accessible parking, but I think really what we're talking about is preferred location parking. And so I think we're highlighting that we are allocating this space to those with an accessible placard so that they are closest to the destination and their journey is the shortest. Is it accessible? There's probably a bit of a scale to how accessible it is when you're on a road that already has an 8.5% grade. It's not great, but it's sort of, we have to work with the terrain to some degree and make it the best we can. And so unless we're able to facilitate a off-street lot that does meet, standard grades, it's tough to balance that.
And the whole installing a crosswalk issue, I as somebody who walks everywhere all the time, having a crosswalk is so important, even if it doesn't have like flashing lights or is super well lit. I've been hit by like drivers crossing a street with a normal crosswalk, and I've also like ran into that problem where there's like a curb cut but no crosswalk there, and then the driver just turns around and is like, "That's not a crosswalk. You shouldn't be walking there." It's like, why is there a curb cut to begin with, right? To facilitate walking across the street. So often, like, if we put those pieces in, it does bring a little bit more awareness of like potential people walking across the street there, even if it's not the most ideal solution. I think we need to have something there to help facilitate and bring more people's awareness, because me just having my white cane or flashlight isn't always enough. So having pieces of the environment help facilitate my safety is crucial.
Thank you, Richard. And I'm sorry that's been your experience. It's scary, and yeah, I've been hearing that crosswalks are some of the most dangerous places for pedestrians, but it's like, well, yes, that's because that's where pedestrians are crossing the road. But yeah, I do think we need to do more to support safer walking infrastructure, and we have some constraints in that area for sure, but it sounds like it's something we can keep in mind for future, but I know we have a long list of other priority places, so it's hard to rank them.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are seeing some very frustrating and depressing incidents taking place. And so it's, we need to make sure the actions we're taking are still placing people or giving people information and direction to be as safe as possible. And so it's, like I say, it's very frustrating, but we make a lot of headway on a lot of other locations where we're able to make quite significant improvements at crossings. And I think this is just a circumstance where if we're going to do something, we really want to make sure we do it correctly. And if we're going to do it correctly, we want to run it through our typical process to ensure that it's meeting our expectations and the guidance that our policy documents are telling us to do. So.
Well, thank you for the verbal update. Much appreciated. Look forward to the curb cuts and more VIP accessible parking on that hill, be it as it may. So thank you.
Can we talk about Country Club?
And next up, we have...
Through the chair,
Yes.
as we have Mr. Rose here, might you refer back to the Norwell Transit Exchange and the links to Loudon with
Absolutely, I would refer
Thank
back to the
you.
Norwell Transit Exchange in relation to Loudon.
So, as was discussed earlier, there's these projects that are proximate but not on top of each other. Loudon, you heard lots about. Country Club, you did hear about in a previous meeting. The design work is still in early days, but that overall project actually includes sort of conceptualizing the entire Norwell corridor. And so not only creating a new transit exchange adjacent to the mall, but creating better connectivity throughout the urban center. And so with that, there are some corridors in there that we do envision as priority corridors, pseudo high streets, if you will. And so in time, they will all come together to connect Loudon Park with all of the neighborhood and then ultimately the mall and all the services and amenities that it includes. So.
Thank you.
If there's anything else, I'm happy to answer that. But
Okay. Look forward to a future where all of our parks have bus access, including Westwood Lake. More to come. Next up, we have a verbal update on the Maffeo Sutton Park Washroom and Amenity Building Project. Ms. Bhopal
Okay,
Singh.
thank you through the chair. I'll try and whip through this, given our timing. Maybe if we could have the slides brought up. So when we were last with you, you gave us some really good feedback. We're still in the design phases, but we wanted to provide you with a rendering of what the buildings look like. But first, just a reminder, because I'm not sure if everybody was with us. So the washroom, for those of you who can imagine Maffeo Sutton, as you go into the park, you come to a circle roundabout where there's accessible parking. Then to your right, if you don't make your way around the whole circle, is the Lions Pavilion. And to the left of the pavilion, as you look to the water, or it would be kind of northwest-ish, is a triangle of land where we have, since 2010, infrastructure already there for servicing a washroom. And this is in a location that doesn't compete or impede some really sensitive archaeological sites that we have in Maffeo Sutton. As we know, it's a traditional territory of Snuneymuxw and related to a village site. And so there's some elements that we have to be very mindful of. So where this washroom is on fill. And so the intention is to do what's called a floating foundation. So because of the nature of the fill. And then I thought I'd just run through we had gone through with you what the footprint and layout looks of the washroom. And if we could go to the next slide, please, that would be great. So what you'll see here is we have 6 gender-neutral washrooms facing the west of the park and the parking lot, with one that is larger, kitty corner to the park, and also adjacent to a full accessible washroom with an adult change table. Both of these are located as close to the accessible parking as possible, with good visibility from the park entrance and the parking. One thing you'll notice is in the southwest corner, we originally had what was called a flex room, where you could have a kiosk for guiding people around the park if you're having a special event, or it could be a baby nursing room. And we switched that to the north corner in order to allow for a larger washroom next to the accessible one and maximize some pieces there where the connectivity from the trail that goes along the edge of the park, that you could do some wayfinding from there. So that flex space remains, but it's shifted. It's just sort of switched. The rest of the footprint looks pretty much as you saw it, with the exception that we had some comments about the gender-neutral urinals not being as open to the rest of the surge. And so we've made it so that there's a door to that area. And those who prefer to use that have access to that. And then you'll notice that there is a larger washroom opposite. So with that shifted space, we're able to get increased accessibility to that area while respecting some feedback around privacy of that urinal section from the rest of the gender neutral. You'll see to the northeast the family accessible change room with, again, another adult change table, and this one accommodating a family that might have some smaller children plus those with accessibility needs being able to be accommodated in one space. And another feature we may look at that we've heard about is for those who have little children who might want to run off while you're dealing with other children, is a gentle restraint table, I'm not sure the correct way of putting it, where you can have a toddler safely while you attend the rest of your adults and children. So that's what that looks like. But the main thing is to show you also the renderings. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And it's a very modest utilitarian design, but with the similar qualities of finishing. I think it's on the agenda package that you saw. So here we go. And so this is the 3D, and we're still going through final design and costing for the finishing. So I want you to close your eyes and imagine Westwood with less of the overhangs, and imagine artwork that's yet to come along the facade of the building, and finishes that will have some high contrast to determine the accessible versus the kind of universal washrooms. So just wanted to come and give you a little bit of an update. And then also to let you know that I think there was some concern. You'll see the Loudon team exited the building. The team working on this is a different set of project managers. And this site has posed some interesting challenges around the archaeological, the servicing. And so what is a lengthier period of time on this one is independent of Loudon. So I just wanted to assure you that it's actually two different sets of consultants and teams, and let you know that the project still is proceeding, but being mindful of some of the site constraints. And we also had some recent, you might have seen the climate change reports and so forth, and making sure that we were in sync with the sea level construction levels. Right? And making sure our mechanical was the right level above, should there be, as we predict at some point, inundation of the park. So just wanted to let you know that those factors have been considered, and fairly recently we had some of that information included. So we'll continue to update you on progress, and the minute we start putting shovels in the ground, letting you know the timing of that. And again, I think I'd like to echo thanks for this committee has been invaluable. I think the results of Westwood Lake, the Maffeo Sutton Accessible and Inclusive Playground continue to reflect the expertise that this particular group is given. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that update. Richard?
From that same study being referenced, extreme heat was definitely something that was featured. You're saying that there's going to be less overhangs. Is there still going to be like significant amount of shade for like seated areas and such?
Through the chair, throughout the park, I mean, you'll notice Maffeo Sutton happens to be a greener park. You're thinking more of the built structure shading.
Yeah.
Incorporated with this building, no, not to the extent as of Maffeo, of Westwood. That's partly around some consideration of crime prevention through environmental design and sightlines. However, there are other amenities in the park to provide shade. And then with that, I might just also note that with the Loudon Park, please note that we also have in the budget shade sales that will be part of the overall park as we look at where shade exists with trees and where it doesn't, so that Loudon Park has, just so you know, we had that budgeted even before we went through this design. So we will look at opportunities, but Maffeo, luckily, because it's quite treed, does accommodate that. Thank you.
And we had that in the design for Westwood as well. It didn't end up being included, but we have it planned for a future phase, some more shade sails along that first beach particularly, where there's almost no shade. So there's one there now? Well, I guess I haven't been there this month, so I'm really glad to hear that. Amazing. Okay, we have one more item, which is correspondence from April 29th from the Clay Tree Society and Nanaimo Association for Community Living about the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Network. There is a recommended motion in this package. And so the recommendation is that the advisory committee recommend that council direct staff to prepare a report regarding the steps associated with the City of Nanaimo joining the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Network and adopting the sunflower symbol at city-owned facilities. So if that is a path that we're interested in pursuing, we need a staff report on that. And Richard, I saw in your email, you suggested a motion that I think is the next piece. If we get the report and we want to go down that path, then how to best implement that. So I really appreciate your proactive vision on that, and you're a bit of a step ahead on this. So I think we, no, sorry, I love the vision. So, and Sean?
Oh, I would just add that, like, part of this too, just from an ACL perspective, is that we have requirements from CARF, who accredits us, to have some sort of ID program. So we'll be pursuing this likely because it's the most simple way. So like, there's already some adoption support within the city of Nanaimo.
Excellent.
Not as the city, but as an organization that will be using it.
Yeah, so if we're going to go, let's all go together, and you're already going, so we might as well support. Okay. Well, I did wear my sunflower earrings today in support. Is there, Sean, is that you moving this recommendation? Yes, and Richard, this is you seconding this recommendation with great excitement? Okay, so all in favor of this recommendation? Okay. Everyone's hands are up. Thank you so much. Andrea, got you there right in time. Thank you so much. Okay, so that carries unanimously. So thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of today's meeting. So thank you for all of your incredible feedback. And it's a pleasure and an honor to work with all of you. Could I have a motion for the adjournment of the meeting? Moved by Nicole, seconded by Richard. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you in September.